Good evening. I'm with Bearing Witness. Tonight, we're reviewing records on fraud in Minnesota that have received little attention. We'll walk through what the documents show, why they matter, and who they affect. Before we get into the executive summary portion of the Just Plain Wrong report, I want to bring your attention to extremely important excerpts that I feel, based off more than 2 decades of experience with DHS health insurance systems, are the two foundational reasons that fraud occurs in Minnesota and why fraud hasn't been a trending topic until now. And I quote, in addition to practices of the facility, the Ombudsman looked at all of the various agencies who had protective obligations for these clients or responsibility to serve as a checks and balances over the actions of the program. For a variety of reasons, those checks and balances failed to protect the clients served by the program or turned a blind eye to the problem. It was not until the Ombudsman's office started raising red flags that actions to identify and correct the problems began. The Minnesota Office of Health Facility Complaints, or OHFC, issued a report with 99 pages of problems and citations. The DHS Licensing Division followed, with a report outlining additional rule violations. The words and phrasing used by all parties connected to METO were similar or identical, indicating a problem often referred to as groupthink, where the message is so ingrained in the leadership philosophy so strong that independent thinking is neither utilized nor tolerated among members of the group. This puts the facility at risk of no one seeing potential problems within the program or the corrective measures that might be needed. The language takes on the characteristics of a mantra. End quote. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here with me on the Bearing Witness channel. If you're new, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, I want to begin by sincerely thanking you for your continued support of this work. The documentation I share on this channel exists for one reason: to bring transparency to a reality unfolding in the state of Minnesota that is largely absent from mainstream media coverage. These issues are rarely discussed outside of protests or polarized debates. Yet, they involve real people, real harm, and real systemic failures. Many would argue that what we're seeing is not accidental, but a repeated and unapologetic pattern, one that persists in part because the public simply isn't aware of it. But this conduct has consequences. Lives are being affected. In some cases, lives are being lost. This is serious, and it deserves careful attention. Over time, I've gathered public records and official documents that speak directly to these failures and built this channel to unpack them with you. Now, if you haven't seen my most recent post, let me briefly bring you up to date. On January 29th, I released a channel trailer and a short video referencing several documents I intended to bring into public awareness. Among them was a 2008 investigative report conducted by the regional ombudsman and an independent review team titled Just Plain Wrong. This report is a public record and, until very recently, had long been available on the state's official website. In fact, available until I uploaded this channel's trailer short, yesterday, January 30. When I went to retrieve the link in order to reference the full report for this video, the PDF had been removed. The page now returns a 404 error, indicating the document is missing. This is not an unfamiliar occurrence. Time and again, when difficult information is brought into public view, access points disappear. Websites are flagged. Channels are shut down. Public records vanish from official government sites. I want to be clear. I adhere to the rules and standards of every platform I use. And in every instance where communication or documentation has been disrupted, those materials have ultimately been restored. Still, it raises a reasonable question. Why do these documents so often become inaccessible at the very moment they are discussed publicly? That said, you won't be missing this report. Prior to its removal, I had already downloaded and recorded excerpts from Just Plain Wrong, with the intention of reviewing it line by line with you. Today, we're going to begin that process together. We're going to look directly at what this document says, in its own words. So with that, let's get into it. Just plain wrong. Excessive use of restraints and law enforcement style devices on developmentally disabled residents at the Minnesota Department of Human Services Minnesota Extended Treatment Program, METO, Cambridge, Minnesota, September 2008. Review team members: Regional Ombudsman, Arlene G. Wegener, Cheryl Turcott, Chris Michelle. Issued under the authority of the Ombudsman for Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities, Roberta Opheim, Ombudsman, State of Minnesota. Executive Summary: the Minnesota Extended Treatment Options, or METO, is a program operated by Minnesota's Department of Human Services, State Operated Services Division. It is licensed as a 48-bed residential program for persons with developmental disabilities. The program was established after the closure of the Cambridge State Hospital and was designed to serve citizens with developmental disabilities who have some of the most challenging behaviors, including those that may have been involved with the criminal justice system or those who have lost their less restrictive community placement. In April of 2007, the Office of Ombudsman for Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities received a complaint about the use of physical restraints on these disabled citizens that included the use of metal, law enforcement style handcuffs. In addition, concern was raised by family members that if they did not authorize the use of such restraints, they or their loved one would be subjected to retaliation. Over the course of the next year, the Office of Ombudsman conducted a systematic review of the treatment provided at the program, as well as the laws, rules, and quality assurance mechanisms that were applicable to the facility. The agency interviewed clients, family members, facility staff and management, county social service case managers, experts in the field of developmental disabilities, and interested stakeholders to gather information about the program and its practices. What the Ombudsman found was a program that was established with a good foundation and lofty goals, but had slid into a pattern of practice that used restraints as a routine treatment modality in far too many cases. Generally accepted best practice standards indicate that restraints should only be used in a situation where there is imminent risk to the client or others, and only for as long as the risk is present. In addition, the use of restraints is a matter of civil and human rights. Current best practice standards focus on positive behavioral supports, which include assessing the purpose of the behaviors and finding positive alternatives for the individual to employ. In the course of the review, the Ombudsman found that 63% of the residents who were in METO at the time of the Ombudsman's review had been restrained. Most of those who had been restrained multiple times. One of the most egregious of the cases revealed a client who had been restrained 299 times in 2006 and 230 times in 2007. One example of reason to place a resident in restraints included touching the pizza box. When the Ombudsman examined what alternatives had been tried to avoid the use of restraints, our agency saw that many times no alternatives were attempted. In some cases, the length of time the person was in restraints exceeded the facility's own guidelines. In addition to practices of the facility, the Ombudsman looked at all of the various agencies who had protective obligations for these clients or responsibility to serve as a checks and balances over the actions of the program. For a variety of reasons, those checks and balances failed to protect the clients served by the program or turned a blind eye to the problem. It was not until the Ombudsman's office started raising red flags that actions to identify and correct the problems began. The Minnesota Office of Health Facility Complaints, or OHFC, issued a report with 99 pages of problems and citations. The DHS Licensing Division followed with a report outlining additional rule violations. Since the completion of the investigative phase of this review, DHS has contracted with outside experts to assess and assist with the changes needed in the program, as well as the system of care for individuals with developmental disabilities. The Office of the Ombudsman is encouraged by this step and will continue to monitor the program to ensure that meaningful changes are made to the benefit of the residents and the staff of the program. The full document spans 202 pages and is currently available in its entirety through the merchandise link on the Bearing Witness website. This report will be referenced repeatedly throughout this series, as it serves as a foundational record in the development of publicly funded Medicaid healthcare programs, including housing stabilization services. A detailed rebuttal to the Just Plain Wrong report is available on the Bearing Witness YouTube channel. This work is for the victims, for accountability, and for the betterment of Minnesota. Thank you for listening. Until the next episode, signing off.